What's happening, art family? Taylor of thebeginnerdrawingcourse.com here, and I know it's been a little bit since I've uploaded a video, but I have a special treat for you today. It is part of a mini course I just released on character outfit design. This will help you with your concept art and your general concepting of characters and figuring out what they're wearing and why. Now, the full thing can be accessed on Skillshare, which is in the description box below. You can sign up for the free trial using the link, and you can watch my Simple Anatomy for Artists as well as my character drawing course on there for a pretty hefty discount. If you feel lost at any time, you can check out those courses as well on thebeginnerdrawingcourse.com or, of course, on Skillshare. I'm getting ready for a pretty big move to a different city right now, so the content will be a little sparse just as I prepare for that. But the nice thing is I will have my own office and I will record even more delicious artistic education for you so you can better express your abilities and bring up your fundamental drawing prowess. Thanks, and I'll see you in the video. Take care and happy creating. Hi, I'm Taylor Payton, and today we're going to be having a little lesson on character outfit variations. This is particularly helpful for conceptualizing your characters in different attire so that you can get a feel for maybe the things you want them to wear throughout the progression of a comic, or when you're working in a concept art pipeline on a video game, and you can figure out with your team, maybe some 3D modelers and whatnot, which outfit looks the best, which describes the character at any given point in the progression of the game or story. And it's just a really useful all-around skill to have. So in this first portion, we're going to be talking about conceptualizing the base body type, which you can see me sketching in pretty early here. It's really just to figure out things like the pose and the proportions. In some cases, you don't want a really involved or intricate pose simply because you're trying to show off the outfit, not the character's personality. So with this character, it is my OC Isaac from Satellite Psychic Saga, and he already has had many design versions throughout the years that I've been slowly working on this project and this character. And so I already have a very good idea going in of how I'm going to work with his particular build, his body type, how I'm going to clad him in various shirts and pants and boots in order to really convey not only his personality and what he likes to wear, but some shape design and some shape language that will be relevant for his development throughout the story as well. So first and foremost, what we're establishing in this first lesson, which will be about 5 minutes long, is a base sketch that we can then put clothes on top of. One of the most beginner mistakes you could make, and I would know because I've made it myself many times starting out, is to just start drawing clothes without ever having drawn the anatomy. So you'll end up with very flat spaces, improperly placed dimensions, and just a whole slew of issues we don't want to deal with. So we're just going to respect the process and draw our character twice so that we know his anatomy. We have a base to draw over for the clothing, and things will just generally go more smoothly. So you saw that I had an initial drawing of the character when we first introduced this particular module of this lesson, and that is to guide the process and make it even smoother, because if I just try to draw this off the bat, I'm going to spend 2 to 3 times longer on it. So I wanted to establish a very rough sketch beneath him first. You can do this in thumbnail format and then use your digital tools to scale it up, or you can simply just draw it and then draw over it. You see me making very tight adjustments even as I'm starting from head to toe and configuring, how much body fat there is to muscle, how much he sort of holds his weight, where his feet are positioned, and all of that good stuff. Because it's all important for the outfit, and it's important to showcase the character's general demeanor, even if we're not going very crazy with the pose here. So initially we just want some solid proportions that we can lay some clothes on like a model, and we can also take into account the different aspects of the musculature because we're drawing anatomy first before we ever start drawing clothing. And in this case, I gave him some compression pants like you see people who are working out use. And you see I'm still going beneath my 2 layers. I'm still going to the initial sketch layer to play with the proportions a little bit because that is easiest at this stage. We really don't want to be messing with the proportions when we're drawing clothing on top of the character. We don't want to be messing with the musculature. We don't want to be messing with the pose. We really just want to be concerned with the clothes. So in closing, we basically have just gone in with the first drawing and we're respecting the process with a second drawing so that we not only know the anatomy better and know the pose and have everything tweaked to the point where we can actually comfortably start drawing some clothes on top of it, but we just know that it's going to end up more solid than if we try to skip the cue and just do this off the cuff. So that's pretty much module 1. Let's talk about some actual clothing for this character in the next module. Did I say clothing in the previous module? Because what I really meant is we're going to separate our character by value. Now don't worry, this is only going to be a minute or so of your time, but I want you to see this part of the process as well because, again, it's important. First, we're going to start off by lassoing the contour of the character and then filling in the character with a flat fill, just a light gray. And it's a pretty straightforward process, using the Shift keys and the Alt keys respectively, whilst using the lasso tool to add or subtract areas, and then filling in the areas that were missed as best as we can. Doesn't have to be perfect, but we want it to be filled. So now not only can we see the silhouette of the character better, meaning the overall shape without any sort of lines if it were just a black shadow, but we can now begin to separate each of the elements of the character, even at this simplistic state, by the values. So you see, I went from a very simplistic, flat gray to a couple steps forward in terms of, medium gray for the hair and a dark gray for the compression pants, as well as a pretty light gray for the skin. So it's just another way of setting us up for different costuming elements and attire and adding some tiny little highlights to the eyes. But now we have value separation, and that'll help give us a better measure of the relative brightness or darkness of any piece of clothing that we lay on our character. So now we have a metric for values and not just lines. There's also some glasses, which are nice. All right, so as promised, we're going to be moving on to the sketch phase for the first outfit. You'll notice that I duplicated the base, which we set up nicely at this point, and then I've lowered the opacity on it, which allows me to more clearly see the lines I'm making for the actual clothes. I'm starting with the shirt first, the upper torso attire, and just creating a overall design that I feel rests nicely on the body. If you need to use some reference, that's perfect. You can go on Pinterest or something and find some really cool looks that you like, and then just sort of reference those shapes, reference how they lay upon the body and how they fold, and kind of replicate that for your character. You'll note I'm being pretty fastidious with the lines, though I'm not going overly detailed in terms of breaking down a whole lot of shapes. Mostly, I'm concerned with having the termination points and the overall big and medium shapes look appealing. The termination points are the points where things end, such as the wrists or the shoulders and the collar, things of that nature. I'm also thinking about the undershirt at this point, which I'm now drawing various horizontal lines through. And you'll notice what I like to do, and what you'll often see with various forms of attire and various design in general, is having motifs. Motifs are things or patterns that are repeated and have a recognizable underlying structure to them that kind of harmonize the design. So the motif I'm using for the upper attire is pretty much banded horizontal lines that sometimes I will make a little more diagonal just for some dynamism and some asymmetry. But I'm also taking into account other shape breakups, other ways to terminate at interesting points, like having the asymmetrical breakup of shapes on the right side of the character's attire right now, because the pants are pretty uniform. They're basically fitted like sort of joggers, so a pretty comfortable fit. One thing you want to consider is what the character is going to be doing and how the clothes will aid them in that endeavor. I'm now going down to draw the boots, which, as you can see, even though it's sped up, is a process of sort of addition and subtraction, where I will draw the lines, and then if I don't like that immediate line, I just Control Z it, basically. In Photoshop, it's a little bit different. It's Control or Command Alt Z, and that allows you to get the lines that you like. So it can be sort of difficult doing that when you're working traditional. You'll have to do a lot more erasing, but then again, there's a little more control over traditional mediums as far as your hand is concerned. It's not as slippery as a tablet surface. So at any rate, I'm now filling in the pants with a similar dark value, still keeping the character fairly transparent, because now it's time to fill in the upper portion, which you can't always get perfect, so you're going to have to do some adjustments thereafter, but it's nice to have that first initial fill to just kind of delineate in terms of the value where things are resting. And now you can see them way more clearly on the character, who is still silhouetted. And I chose a pretty mid-gray, slightly on the darker side for the jacket, a very dark gray for the pants, and a light gray for the shirt, meaning that all of these aspects have the potential to be made darker or lighter as I see fit on this design. So I'm also bringing back sometimes his values by making him opaque again, changing the opacity of his layer so that I can see more clearly how those values are stacking next to one another. Because everything's relative. The background is white, for example, and so everything is going to look darker than that. But I want his attire to be able to be read from a distance relatively easily, and I want to make sure that each of those interesting parts of the jacket have sort of call-outs in terms of a brightness difference. So that's something that, while the outfit is not overtly very complicated, there's not tons of detail, what is there should still have its own sort of value separations. I actually like this look with the sort of rough, kind of partially whitened, asymmetrical look. It doesn't pop off the background very much, which is why I end up changing it later. But if I were to make another duplicate of this outfit and not adjust the drawing of the shirt or jacket at all, I would definitely have one variant where those white parts are kept pretty white and just change the color of the background to be a more mid-gray so that it pops off of it better. The name of the game here is contrast, because if you have contrast, then the eye is drawn to those points of distinction, and you want an interesting breakup of distinction amidst the various shapes and the various pieces of attire that are on the character. So you want your drawing to look solid, and you want your forms to read nicely in that regard, with your lines and with your forms and perspective and whatnot. But you also want some value difference to help things pop and to show that they, in fact, are separate aspects of the design. Just like I'm doing roughly with the boots here and finishing up this part.